Hello again, people. With the brand new Spamton Sweepstakes / charity event, Toby has treated the community to some hidden lore about Deltarune. A handful of new songs, some environments, a brand new enemy design are all amazing, but not the most interesting thing about these sneak peeks. But recent events with these sneak peeks have grabbed my attention. The majority of this video will be talking about this single post, which we can discern as part of Noelle's private blog that she has. The significance of this post is that it gives us much sought after context of the relationship between the characters before Deltarune Chapter 1. More specifically between Susie and Kris being our two-man lighteners. This post could be found after meeting the goal of the engraved watch. It should be mentioned that this watch belongs to Noelle, as her name is engraved on the bottom. This blog post doesn't seem to reference the watch in any way, so for now I'll just consider irrelevant to the story. The story being Noelle's recount of events that happened after class an indeterminate amount of time before Deltarune. Best estimate would be a few weeks to a few months depending on how far into the school year the main characters are. It must have been soon after Susie had just been transferred to hometown school, as Noelle refers to Susie as the new girl. Noelle explains that Susie has an incredible aversion to Kris, as Susie harasses Kris constantly. Kris seems to be indifferent to this, however. Susie makes an attempt to scare Kris by threatening to bite his head off like an apple. Incredibly funny if this is a reference to that adorable GIF that was uploaded to the subreddit almost a year ago. Kris appears to think this idea is amusing, as Noelle, watching from the outside, seems to think that Kris begins to snicker at this thought. Susie becomes enraged as they grab Kris by the hair. And I swear, Toby, you know what you're doing. God damn it, Noelle just froze? Are you kidding me? I know what Toby would be implying if that was an intentional hint, but I can't shake the fact that that was just a slip-up. If it was taken as a hint, then that implies that Kris, even before Chapter 1, has some sort of ability to control Noelle. She wanted to help, but a chilling force stops her, and we can discern later that Kris is aware that Noelle is listening to them. Susie remarks that one day their mother won't care about them anymore. Kris says something in response to this, which makes Susie turn tail and bolt out of the room. So of course, we are left with the question, what did Kris say to Susie? Whatever it was, it had to be brief the way Noelle described it. The three prevailing answers I found in the community are, I know, wouldn't be the first time, and just like yours. All bone-chilling possibilities. I know is a good candidate, as the phrase is very short and falls in line with Kris's feelings about being the only human in a town full of monsters. Kris admitting to Susie that they know that Toriel and Asgore will soon grow tired of them and get rid of them could have possibly both made Susie feel awful for implying it in the first place, as well as possibly reminding her of her experience with her own parents. The community seemed to be in agreement that Susie's threat was a projection born from her jealousy of Kris having loving parents. This may also explain why Susie immediately left the room, as this response might have validated Susie's feelings. Feelings, of course, that one day Toriel and Asgore will just get rid of Kris. But in all honesty, I would feel like it would be the former. I think if this phrase is what Kris had said, then it would have made Susie feel awful. She may be mean, but she's not a sadist. Wouldn't be the first time is also a gut-wrenching idea, but in all honesty, it seems to be a longer response compared to I know. This response implies that Kris was in fact intentionally abandoned by their human parents. This realization might have struck a chord with Susie, as it may turn out that she is also adopted. Noelle describes her as this new girl, and also Susie's house is nowhere to be found in hometown. Also, Susie doesn't call her parents at the end of Chapter 2. It could very well be that she doesn't have anyone to call. I think if this is the answer, then this might be pretty enlightening on Susie's character. A good portion of the community assume that she had some sort of broken home life, but if this answer is the case, then it might actually be that Susie is just straight up homeless. Remember when she remarked about the bowl of milk that Alphys had been leaving out? The same bowl of milk that can be found in a back alleyway, the typical spot a homeless person might stay? We also have just like yours? In all honesty, this seems like the most unlikely of answers. If you read context clues about Kris's reaction to Susie, you can discern that Kris has an interest in her, whether it be intrigue or flat-out infatuation. Kris would not openly insult Susie or intentionally make her feel bad. Yes, Susie's reactions would line up with this answer, but Kris's character choices would not. At first I was going to choose I know as what I believe to be the most convincing answer, but if we come at this problem from a hypothetical context of Susie being in foster care, wouldn't be the first time actually makes more sense. Imagine, if you will, a monster and a human, both in an orphanage, and a pair of monsters come by with the hopes of adopting a new child. They see a young purple monster and a young human with brown hair. Mother realizes how impossible it would be for a human to be adopted into a family in a town full of monsters, so she goes out of her way to choose Kris. Being only a school teacher, Toriel probably couldn't afford to take them both, as Asgore's flower business isn't making any money because he opts in for giving flowers away instead of selling them. Toriel adopts Kris, leaving Susie alone. Susie is heartbroken and bitter over this. This also explains why Susie seems to be bullying Kris. But for that brief moment, when Kris laments over the fact that the reason why they're there is because their parents got rid of them, makes Susie's stomach sink. She understands what it is like to be abandoned, and even though she may be jealous of Kris, she also finds that Kris understands her perfectly. So many feels. I will now offer my own answer on what I think Kris said. It's clear Kris enjoys Susie's company. Knowing this can give us perspective of why Kris doesn't react to Susie's harassment. Whatever Kris said would have made Susie so upset or so scared to make her leave in such a hurry. Personally, I'm not a fan of the theory that Kris is the main antagonist for Deltarune, because based on Kris's actions, it seems like yes, Kris may be a troublemaker, but they've never been known to do anything evil until Chapter 2. I think Kris has a way of reading people. Kris doesn't act on their own unless they know someone will get hurt. When Susie threatens to bite their face off, they don't react. But when the Spade King is about to 86 Susie, Kris steps in without thinking. Yes, you could chalk this up to Kris simply not caring about their own safety. This could be true, but I would also say that Kris's calmness comes from an understanding when there is danger and when there isn't. Susie is about to bite Kris in Chapter 1, but Kris chooses to remain silent. What did Kris say in the classroom that they didn't say in the hallway later? I think Kris said something to Susie to make her realize that she could never kill anyone. It could have been something as simple as, "You're not gonna hurt me." They could have also said something like, "You're not a murderer." This is just a hypothesis. We may never know exactly what Kris said. For all we know, Kris could have just been egging Susie on by saying something like, yeah, do it, bite my head off. It's also quite possible Kris couldn't have said anything. There's also a theory that Kris simply frowned at Susie after what she said, and it made her feel guilty, so she left. Also, Kris could have simply said something completely irrelevant, like, "Do you want your apple back?" completely ignoring Susie's threat. If you have any counterpoints or other ideas, I would love to hear them. That being said, there's an amazing Google Doc that has been made detailing every secret website and post, not including this one for some reason. It probably just hasn't been updated yet. Also, if you can go ahead and donate to Child's Play, the charity Toby chose for this event, links are in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.